So yeah, so they had said initially too, like, they expect people to be disappointed with the PvE news, and like I think like even for me, like I'm disappointed about it because I was really looking forward to PvE. I love the idea of like talent trees and having like this deep progression. So like you have like this replayability and this way to really enjoy the PvE experience while also being able to play it. Like it just felt like for the Overwatch 2 PvE, I was really looking forward to having like almost what would be like a separate game within a game, and then you have like this really cool concept, right? It's awesome. Like you see games like Destiny that have like PvE, you know, there's like obviously like a little bit different with how they work, PvP, PvE, etc. But like I was really excited about that type of stuff because it just that's fun to me, right? Not everybody enjoys PvE or vice versa, PvP, right? But I was looking forward to having that option to be able to be like, okay, I'm gonna load in today, play some ranked games, head over to, you know, some PvE if I want to, maybe go for some like really fun like world first. Like remember how fun the world first was with like the Halloween event? Remember that, chat? How much fun we had? Like with that, like the Halloween event where we went for the world first. I was looking forward to stuff like that because it can be a really fun opportunity to go and do that. Now I'm sure we can still do that with like some of the new missions and things like that. Don't get me wrong, like, and that will be fun. But I was really looking forward to like that stuff like the talent trees. Now, hopefully, and I really do hope maybe there's a way for them to bring those talent trees into the game. I would really enjoy if for like, you know, I really hope they would be able to bring something like that into the game at some point, because if they've created so much, you know, if they have so many of those talent trees and like different progressions, maybe they're able to bring that into like the seasonal missions at some point, which would allow for like at least the opportunity to see somehow how those talent trees were and be able to do that. I really hope that could happen, because if there's a lot there, then maybe they're able to do that. So, yeah, I think like they had said it, you know, pretty much perfectly at the beginning of it. I think a lot of people would be disappointed in that, and yeah, I mean, I think it is disappointed, right? I think we, you know, I like the PvE is there's still PvE stuff happening. It just isn't like what was initially shown, where it would be like talent trees and like they said, like the hero progression power stuff, like things like that. It's just they're not doing it that way now. There won't be like talent trees and like the full mode, because I think a lot of people were expecting like a campaign mode with like a lot of replayability, if that makes sense. Like I think what a lot of people were looking forward to was like, you have a campaign mode, you can play through it, and then you also have talent trees where you can build off of your hero and create like these really fun like ideas and like iterations of the character that you can play, right? I think that's what a lot of people were excited for. And the announcement today was saying that they're not going to be doing that anymore. They're going to be bringing PvE to the game, but it's not going to be in the way that was initially shown a few years ago. It's going to be like the limited time events they have, story missions, things like that. So yeah, I think like when they said that people would be disappointed, they were correct about that. I really like, I think a lot of people will be, you know, I like, there's gonna be a lot of people that like, you know, were like, yeah, I mean, you know, PvE can be fun, and they like the PvP, and that's the case with Overwatch right now. It's very much a PvP game, but I think there was a lot of people also excited for the idea of PvE, and not just like Overwatch players. I think like, you know, even a lot of people just like a fun like multiplayer PvE game that you can play sometimes, right? You know what I mean? Like, you see other games like that have that, where people can be really excited about, like, you know, some people like log on and play Destiny too, and they get to play PvE on like patches, and like I think that's would have been really fun if they had like a really cool campaign and launches and stuff like that, where you could do like world first and things. So, like I said, I was looking forward to like the deep talent trees of PvE. I thought that was gonna be fun. That just also goes to me like playing WoW and like enjoying like talent trees, and like you look at games like completely off topic here, like Diablo 4's talent trees look great. At least at least the limited amount I saw look great. See, just something about talent trees, and maybe it's like the playing WoW side of me that just really enjoys like talent trees and what kind of like specs you can go into and like creations you can make with that. So that's just like, when it comes to that stuff with talent trees, it sounds like, at least if I'm understanding this correctly, it sounds to me like they're gonna take everything that they've had with PvE, right, and they're gonna put it into the game, but it's not gonna be all dropped at once, and it probably won't have some of the features like talent trees or like hero progression within that PvE that they have. That's literally what it sounded like. You were saying that's correct to what I was just saying about the PvE? Yeah, that's what it feels like. Like, I'm still looking forward to story missions. Like, I'm not like, oh, heck that. Like, I'm looking forward to that, and I think, like, it sounds like Season 6 will be a fun season when you get all that stuff at once. Speaking of that, is Flashpoint the new game mode? Okay, yeah. So Flashpoint is the new game mode. Okay. All right. So that's basically just to give you my thoughts on PvE. That was my thoughts. You know, obviously I was very much looking forward to, the talent tree side of things with PvE. Obviously, we're not getting that. Go look at the roadmap now. Talk a little bit about the roadmap. First of all, talking about this, I think Quest Watch looks really cool. I don't know what it is. I love this image right here, and I'm really curious to see what Quest Watch is. Are you gonna like Quest? Because I see Quest and I think, wow. Mischief and Magic. Cinematic reveal. Okay, listen. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Sojourn has a dog, right? So is this a Sojourn cinematic? I remember people talked about that for a while. I wonder if there'll be anything new with Summer Games. Also, while we're talking here, I just want to say this. If Lucio Ball returns, and I don't know if you know if this can be possible or not, Gavin, is there going to be a way to where we can actually 3-stack in like arcade modes? So for example, like we've been prevented from like 3-stacking in Lucio Ball since any of that was ever like added. He said it would be really cool if there was something new in Summer Games. Smile. I'll take that as there's going to be something new. I would love if we could be able to like 3-stack in that without being like, because there was an issue in Overwatch 1 with Lucio Ball where you could not 3-stack or play together with your friends because your MMR was too high. I guess that was in comp mode though, so technically there's no comp mode, maybe not. 5v5 mini comp season, which I understand this as a 5v5 comp season, which means we get to 5-stack chat. So we get to play with our friends in 5-stack. Now, I'm curious on this one, and I don't know if you can go into any more details on this, Gavin. Is the 5v5 mini comp season I can only queue within a certain range of my friends, or can you play with anybody? I'm really curious now. Like, do you have an MMR to that tied to it? Like, can I queue up with his Flats, Jay, Siegel, etc., or are we like limited? So I just got confirmation on the 5v5 mode chat. You can play with anybody. There is MMR being used to matchmake. So you're saying that if I wanted to do a video with 4 people from chat, like, hey, 4 bronze players and 4 silver players, and we go and play a rank game, I could do that with that mini comp season. Is that correct? That is correct. Okay, that is confirmation. That is correct, chat. We have some content to do in season 5. All right, so get ready for that, chat. We're gonna try that. We will be able to play ranked with bronze players, silver players, gold players, etc., and queue up 5v5. I'm looking forward to that. That's gonna be a good time. On Fire returns. Once again, we're talking to Gavin in the chat. On Fire, Gavin's been working on. I hope it's really cool. Create a workshop mode. I guess we'll see what that is. Season 6, we got story missions. Like I said, talking about the disappointment of like not having talent trees and all that. Like I said, obviously looking forward to PvE. Disappointed in not having like that full PvE experience. Doesn't mean I'm not excited for story missions. Looking forward to that. I think it's gonna be fun. I'm sure it's gonna be a good time. Maybe there'll be a leaderboard. We can go for world first again. Maybe get the crew together, go for world first. At least we can do that. New support hero, which we've known about for a while. Flashpoint. New game mode. We got a new game mode coming. Hero mastery. That's, I think, what Aaron was talking about. So, all really cool things. It seems like Season 6 is pretty stacked, if I'm not incorrect here. I can't really comment on how stacked Season 5 is because I don't really know what Quest Watch is. But it really seems like Season 6 is like, stacked. Fire in range. Does that mean they're, like, redoing the fire in range? Player progression system that is needed. That way, like, people aren't relying fully on the battle pass. I think a player progression system is good. Overwatch Anniversary, which is interesting because the Overwatch Anniversary is going to be in, like, August? Not reworking the whole fire in range, but adding some cool new things. Okay, thank you, Gavin. Okay, speaking of that, is Quest Watch different from Mischief and Magic? Or is it, like, it's related to Quest Watch? Because, like, the image makes it seem like it's a part of Quest Watch because the bottom left here is the same thing as this right here. Or is Quest Watch, you have different things you're going to do here? It is different? Okay. So it is different. These are 2 different things. Okay, confirmation on that. Thank you, Gavin. I appreciate it. And more. ... It sounds like Season 6 is going to be stacked. It sounds like we're going to get a good amount of PvE stuff then. Here's my question, and I hope they can do this. I really hope they can find ways to implement heroes into these story missions with talent trees, right? I really hope they can find ways to do that, because if they have the talent trees there and they have all this, like, even if it's like you have a story mission and you can only play 8 heroes, can those 8 heroes have a talent tree? You know what I mean? Like, is that possible? Is that possible? But yeah, we'll see what the story missions are. And then Season 7 and beyond, we have a new tank hero, which obviously we're excited for a new tank hero. I imagine that's set for season... Okay, so just so I can confirm this. TJ, thanks for the free Prime sub. I appreciate that. Just so I can confirm this, this means that Season 7 and beyond. So for example, this means the new tank hero is Season 8. Correct? I'm pretty sure this Season 8 would be the new tank hero. I don't think that's changed the schedule on this. It says season 7 and beyond, which I think putting new tank hero at the beginning of this, heroes will still be every other season, so it's season 8. So yes, just to confirm, we're not getting a tank hero in season 7. It's going to be season 8. New collaboration event, limited time mode, which I imagine is something like Quest Watcher, like we've seen with the Star Wars thing. New control map. Okay. Control again? Wait. Control's Koth, right? So we're getting another control map. So we had Antarctic Peninsula and then another one. New winter event. New hero mastery missions. This will be kind of cool. Roadhog rework. We'll see how that goes. Fan favorite modes return. Cinematic debuts. Okay, listen. I'm going to be honest with you, chat. I'm a big fan of the cinematics. There's an occasion, we're going to have to do it again soon, where we'll sit down with chat and we'll watch all the cinematics together on stream. It's a great time. I love the cinematics Overwatch has. I still think this should be a TV show revolved around Overwatch. I think this probably... It would be really cool to see that. The cinematics are really, really cool, and I'm looking forward to those. Competitive Mystery Heroes returns. Mystery Heroes Tuesday. My guess is, and I don't know if Gavin can comment on this, Competitive Mystery Heroes was played quite often in comparison to other limited time competitive modes. I imagine Competitive Mystery Heroes had a lot of people playing it and a lot of like good feedback with it. Lore Codex. Now, I think a lot of people look at that and go, lore. I think a lot of people are going to be excited about that. Believe it or not, Overwatch, while it does have lore, has a lot of like, you kind of have to like put like a puzzle piece together, and there isn't as much lore about the game as you would expect. For example, if you look at a game like World of Warcraft, for example, maybe even Diablo. I don't know how Diablo's lore is, but like, there's a lot of lore there, and you kind of follow the lore. Comp Mystery Hero saw more players in open queue for a while. Oh, damn. Okay. So lore, I think people are going to like it. A lot of people are going to be excited about that because, and I imagine the lore codex is also tied in with the PvE announcement, because I imagine there was a lot of lore really put towards the PvE. I mean, obviously, right? So I imagine the lore codex will have a lot of what was there. And then the Sombra rework, which I think I'm very curious to see what that is. Hopefully, the overall vision and the overall goal of the Sombra rework, and this is what I'm really hoping for, okay, is that Sombra is fun to play against. It is something I've talked about, where when a hero is reworked and is played, I want it to be fun for the person playing it and also fun to play against. Now listen, I know it doesn't make much sense. Like, you don't get like high nooned by a Cassidy and go, oh, that was great, right? But like, for the most part, when you get high nooned, like, it doesn't feel like getting hacked by Sombra or EMP'd or like scenarios or stunned. You know what I mean? Now, an ability that doesn't feel fun to play against, and maybe not even fun to play, or it can be fun to play, is Cassidy's magnetic grenade, right? So there's always that. That's what they have for the roadmap here. So overall, since they have a lot of stuff coming, I mean, like I said, I think people are still going to be, I mean, people are definitely going to be disappointed with the PvE announcement. I'm looking forward to still seeing the stuff they have for this. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff here, and it seems like Season 6 is going to be absolutely stacked, which would be like, what, August? So it seems going to be stacked. So Overwatch 2's PvE hero mode is being scrapped. Blizzard explains what happened and why. We probably should read this. All right. Game director Aaron Keller and executive producer Jared Noose discuss why the eagerly anticipated mode will no longer be released in the future of Overwatch 2. Overwatch is a game that rose from the ashes of Titan, an ambitious MMO that Blizzard pulled the plug on. First of all, I remember being so excited about Titan because I played WoW, and then Jeff Kaplan, who was a big part of the WoW team, was going to make Titan, which is supposed to be this really, really, like, cool MMO. So Titan became Overwatch, by the way. Just a little bit of backstory on that one. If you played WoW at the time, you started to hear about Titan. You're like, oh, wow, this is going to be sick, because Jeff Kaplan was going to make Titan. And then, obviously, eventually Titan was scrapped and became Overwatch, which is what we see now. In the wake of his decision, developers at the studio reworked ideas they had for Titan into what would become Overwatch, a hero-based multiplayer shooter that was critically acclaimed and hugely successful. Blizzard's Team 4 is no stranger to picking up those pieces of a shattered project, but this process has been kept behind closed doors. So when they're saying the title here, I think when they say hero mode is what they're going to call where you have the hero talent trees, right? They're not saying that PvE is scrapped. They're saying the hero mode, the one that was going to have the in-depth talent trees and things like that. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what they're referencing on that. The Blizzard way was to keep games out of the public view until they were ready to be seen and to release them only when they were as close to ideal as they possibly could. That isn't the way anymore. Not for Overwatch 2 anyway. When the sequel to Overwatch was announced at BlizzCon 2019, where the game was also playable, it was with the promise of a PvE hero component that would allow players to gather their squads and play through a narrative-driven multiplayer experience. On top of that, each of the heroes that they'd come to know and love would be reworked for PvE and given progression systems that would allow players to unlock new talents. It was an ambitious new mode that in many ways was justified to use the 2 at the end of the title. Now, however, Blizzard has confirmed that the promised PvE hero component will not be released at all. In a video... I almost read that in a video game director. I'm like... in a video, game director Aaron Keller and executive producer Jared Noose said that the team had made the decision to take the PvE elements of Overwatch 2 in a different direction and detailed a roadmap for upcoming seasons that reveal a new hero, maps, rebalances, and a number of story-focused additions. According to Keller and Noose, this decision was made for the good of the game and its live multiplayer component. Whether that proves to be true will be judged based on the execution of the upcoming seasons detailed in its new roadmap. But regardless of this, Blizzard and Team 4 pitched an experience that won't be realized, which will no doubt confuse and frustrate players. GameSpot spoke to Keller and Noose about what... Also, am I saying his last name right? About what led to the decision and how Team 4 intends to try and make something good rise from the ashes of a failed idea once again. Okay, sorry. Making sure I say his last name right. All right, here we go. GameSpot. The big talking point is the direction that you're now taking with PvE. I am saying it correctly? Okay, making sure. That you basically aren't doing it. Is that the correct way to characterize it? It's not happening anymore, and you've pivoted away from it. I think I would characterize it... This is Aaron Keller, sorry. I think I would characterize it slightly differently. Which is we are doing part of what the team has set out to do, but not the entirety of what was discussed back at BlizzCon 2019. So the real focus is on the story missions and the experience as opposed to the more open-ended hero mode and that stuff. And I think the one thing that concerns me about that is more going to be about the replayability. Like, I think one thing that the PvE hero mode really would have added to a lot of PvE stuff was replayability, right? Being able to go back and, like, play those modes because you have progression systems in place, right? So it's fair to say that the experience that you showed during that first Overwatch 2 reveal is not going to be the one that will be released at any point. Yeah, exactly. This is Aaron Keller speaking. I'll say when it switches over. So we are definitely not doing the hero mode and the talents and that power progression system. Okay, so Aaron's saying they're not doing hero mode, there's no talents, and there's no power progression system. When did you realize that you weren't going to be able to execute in this way, and what was it that led to that realization? Aaron Keller. Yeah, this was a process. The development of any game is a process. In the years following our announcement at BlizzCon 2019, we had a really large portion of our team working on the PvE side of that game. And I think that the players of our live running game could feel that because we eventually stopped making content for it. Oh yeah, there wasn't any content being made. It's been maybe 2.5 years since the last hero that we launched, and we don't want to be back at that point where it's another 3.5 years since launching a PvP map. So we really looked hard at what we were doing with the live game in service of this much bigger thing that we were working on and hoping to release later. The interesting thing about it is it's such a difference releasing content for players that are playing your game instead of saving up all of that content for one big release that you're going to do later. So we came to the realization that this wasn't the right way to be developing for all of Overwatch. Well, a lot of games started to do that in general, right? Where, like, it used to be you get a game, it would release, you'd get a few patches, and then on to the next game, you just play that game, right? Obviously, in recent years, and it started, like, I don't know what game it started with. It started to go more times like Battle Pass stuff and like other variations of things, and like that's where we're at now, right? It was about 1.5 years ago that we made the decision to really shift strategy. That's when we rapidly shifted the resources on our team to working on launching Overwatch 2, and that's what came out last October. But at the same time, what we came away with from that first experience was a new value for developing Overwatch. It was a new value for running the team, namely to always be putting out fresh, exciting, fun, new experiences for our players. As we were running up to launching Overwatch 2, we realized that we could not build that other game. We couldn't save up all that content over the course of what was looking to be at least the next several years to finish it, and by doing that, pulling more and more resources away from the people that were all playing our game and all the people that would be playing Overwatch 2. So we made a decision later last year that we would focus all our efforts on the live running game and all of our PvE efforts on their new story arc that we're launching in Season 6. And then on top of that, to keep all of our PvE efforts, all our co-op efforts invested in our seasonal releases rather than one big box release. So it sounds like they're going to take all the PvE stuff that they've made, and they're going to release it with different seasons. All right. Presumably, the resources, time, and other necessities that you have needed to make PvE were factored in when you originally came up with a plan to create this game. What has changed since then that now you're in a position where you can't do it? And now this is Jared speaking. I guess this is a general answer, but I think it's totally applicable here. When you make a plan originally, it's based on a general idea and direction. Then as you develop a game, it's not developing a piece of bank software or something where there's a finite set of functions it has to have. When you get into the meat of it and you start feeling it out, it's like, okay, well, is this fun? Is this good? In this original idea, the thing that we think is going to be awesome, and then you iterate on that until you find something that you're really excited about. Once you're kind of in that, okay, we have a good idea of what direction this could go in. The question is, well, what does it take to get there? And so I think that if you're building a game when you're taking the exact same engine, the exact same team, the exact same crew that has already shipped the same thing, and you're doing version 3 or version 4 of it, it's pretty easy to plan really well in advance. But for games like this, it's tougher because this team was building something that is totally different than anything that we've built before. Well, they built before. These story missions are significantly different than archives or other ways that we've told stories inside the game before. And so developing those, what it takes to do that, the technology required, the people required, the iteration required is all different. So I understand that people think it's probably relatively simple. It's definitely not, and especially because what you don't want is just try to build a thing, get it out the door, and move on. You want to build something that really resonates and that people love. So I guess my take is just as the team learned more about what it took to make this, as it learned more about the time, the iteration, and the technology required, it just became clear that the schedule wasn't going to work. Now back to Aaron. Yeah, I think the scope of the hero missions was really, really large, and what it was going to take to finish it was going to be a pretty remarkable, massive lift. You think about making a game that is supposed to be almost its own standalone co-op experience that people are going to be able to play as a main game, and not just how do you put all of the content into that to finish it. Even just a small piece of it, the talent trees, 40 to 50 talents per hero, over 35 plus heroes. You're looking at thousands of talents to make everything just to get the game out the door, plus all of the content and the missions you'd be playing to do that. And it is a pretty gargantuan ask for a team. And on top of that, you need to run that as a live game, so content has to continually come out for that side of the game. In reality, what we were looking at was running 2 separate games at the same time with a set of heroes, as that piece is shared between the 2 of them. And as we started to further into it, obviously our players could realize that we were pulling focus away from the live game, but it didn't just look like there was a definitive end date in sight where we could finally be able to put that stamp on it. Or that end date was years away, and it no longer felt like we could be doing that to our players, or we could be doing that to the live game that we were running. And that's when we took the moment to shift strategy and put everything into the live game. Pretty much sounds like they really wanted to do the PvE. They really liked the concept of having all that stuff. As they started getting more in development and they made Overwatch become more of a consistently updated game, they realized they couldn't provide the experience they wanted to provide initially, is what it sounds like. That was a quote there. You want to build something that really resonates that people love, and at the time learn more about what it took to make the PvE mode. As it learned more about the time, the iteration, technology required, it just became clear the schedule wasn't going to work. I think there's going to be a lot of frustration about how we get here because Overwatch has always been a live game. So people are going to think, well, you knew this was a live game, yet you pitched this other Overwatch game, and then also you justified the 2 on the Overwatch title with that. So we're in a situation now where the game is what it always has been. It's evolved in some ways, but a sequel was released, and that sequel's justification hinged on the PvE. Why did that happen? That's a great question. We've talked a lot in the past about Overwatch 2 and how different it is from the original game, even just being free to play and swap into a 5v5 team format and all the new content that we developed for it. To me, that's the biggest change that we're looking at here. It's not just that we have some of the same heroes of the game, it's the way that we're writing the game and how we're looking at the game going forward. I really hope that the roadmap that we just released is something that illustrates that to players. We have we have a lot coming out this year, and even if you look at Season 6, it's the biggest season we've ever launched in the history of Overwatch. Just to talk about that, I was saying how it seemed like Season 6 was going to be absolutely stacked. That's what it seems like. We have a new support hero coming out that season. We have a new game mode. We've never released a new game mode as a seasonal update ever in Overwatch. It has 2 new maps coming out with Flashpoint. We are running the PvE event that season. We have a whole new type of PvE content that we're releasing with our single-player hero mastery missions. Overwatch Anniversary is running another event. And then on top of all of that, we've got the start of our new story arc with the new story missions, cinematics, and other lore content such as the Lore Codex. It's all packed into this one season, and this is the future of what we're trying to bring to Overwatch 2. That's what I hope players can take away from this experience, the shift in the way that we want to develop for this game and what we want to put out for our players. All right, and then Jared. Yeah, just to build on that a little bit, I think it's interesting thinking about this over time, coming to the team a little bit later and seeing the state of things and building that plan to go forward, because the original pitch was this big monolithic thing that releases it. It has all this pressure and expectations set against it, and really the decision that we've made was not to walk away from PvE or totally to sort of ban this side of the game. It's to move into a model that we know we can deliver on. It sounds like they want to do PvE, but they're not going to do it that the way they had said with like the talent trees. We know that if we get into the seasonal cadence, we can release things during seasons in a way that we can plan for it effectively, and that we think is going to be really exciting to players. That, more to the point, gives us time to adapt to the next thing for players before you release it. And I think moving away from that idea of this one big singular PvE release moment and into a no, we're going to do PvE stuff all the time, we have all these plans. Season 6 has 3 different flavors of that, and we have a bunch of other versions of that coming up in seasons after that. For me, that's really the important thing here. We want to acknowledge that it's not the thing that people were expecting, but also that we have high confidence that we can deliver in the way that we're shifting now, which for us is really exciting. You can never ask anyone to take your word for it, so the hope is that once we start releasing this stuff in Season 6, players can see it and believe it too. We were talking the other day about live events and things like that in game, and Aaron, off the top of his head, rattled off how many live events Overwatch 1 generally had in the season. In a year, it was 6 or something. Now it's 3 a season of varying size, and we all have these in seasons in a year. For us, it just feels better to be on this path where we know we can consistently release the updates to the players, tell a story in an ongoing, unfolding way, and not wait for this big, singular moment, if that makes sense. To summarize, they just don't want to sit there and stack up, and they just want to release stuff as they have it, rather than wait on that one, because they said it would take several years to be able to get out what they wanted to do. So they shifted their strategy. There are a lot of live first-person shooters out there, and you always have been competing for attention. The thing about Overwatch 2 that really was exciting for me, and for a lot of fan base, was PvE. It was a big swing for the team, the distinguishing factor. What is the impact of not having that, and what would you describe as the big swing for Overwatch 2 now? It's a great question. One of the things that I've always loved about Overwatch, and I think that it resonates with players, is the universe and the world that we've created. All of the heroes that we've created and all of the heroes and characters that inhabit it, the Overwatch universe, it's this bright, inspirational future, and I think that all of our heroes really resonate with players, not just who their characters are, but their backstory and their lore. I think why a lot of people are so invested in Overwatch PvE or Overwatch co-op content is because we're not really able to deliver a ton of story in our game with just standard PvP gameplay, which is true because the game hasn't had much lore in the years it's been out. Obviously, there's lore. Like, if you go, there's probably like a lore, like, wiki you can go look up, and, like, you know, they have a few books and, like, things you can kind of, like, connect the pieces together, but it hasn't been, like, definitive lore, which PvE and pretty much any game can deliver that because you can get the storyline that you want to see, right? So I think that for us, that's the side of PvE we really want to continue running with what Season 6 is, which I'm looking forward to the story, right? It's the start of this big narrative where players do get to find out more about Overwatch, and they do get to find out more about what's happening in the world and what's happening with a lot of characters in the game. I still would like a Netflix show. So we are really committed to the PvE side of the game and delivering that story. On top of that, we have multiple cinematics coming out this year, which the cinematics are awesome. I just want to point that out. That either set up that story that we'll be telling in Season 6 or to further some of those characters that we're working on. And there's more to come. There are other pieces of the story, like features that we're bringing to the game. Another one that we're doing for Season 6 is our lore codex, where players will be able to, if they want to, dig in a lot more into what the universe is all about. So I hope that players can see that we are still committed to PvE and what you're doing more with the story than we've ever done before. We're just doing it in a different way than we've originally talked about. Which, yeah, I mean, that's, yeah. I mean, that's, I still think there should be an Overwatch series. One of the most exciting things for players when they saw the PvE was the characters, and you were pitching really interesting different ways of using their abilities that seemed specific to the PvE. It felt exciting to have this new twist on heroes. Is any of that coming back, and is there going to be opportunity in these PvE modes to play these characters differently, or is it going to be a largely familiar heroes but in new context? We would love to see more of that in the game, and while that was an integral part of our hero missions, we're no longer doing those, so those won't come to the game that way. But we had put a lot of work into our hero talents, and there were a lot of really exciting things, not just with gameplay, but with the fantasy of what a hero was when we could start interacting with a hero that way. So we would like to bring those back in the future. It's just going to take a different form than being part of the new co-op experience. So, like, does that mean they're going to use the talents, but, like, not yet? I'm just trying to understand, like, is that, or is it, like, in the current stuff they're going to be releasing, it's not going to quite have that yet? Was that what I'm understanding with it? More broadly speaking, you've probably done a lot of work on the PvE. And I think we can still use the talents for cool things we haven't talked about yet. They might not be called talents. So you're saying that you might have things that the talents will have, but they probably won't be called talents, but they were what the talents would have been if there was going to be a talent system. And that's essentially what I'm getting from that. So, like, you may see some of those talents in the game, but they won't be under, like, a talent tree, but they'll be involved in the game. Is that, like, what I'm understanding on that? Kind of like, Ash had the stun. Ash had that stun in Halloween event. I like that. More broadly speaking, you've probably done a lot of work on the PvE. How much of that is going to make it its way into the PvP or repurposed? I know people often think repurposed is bad, but at least to be in the game. There's a lot that went into developing PvE, and it's not just the content we made. Some of this is tools and technology, and so if you look at Junkenside's Wrath of the Bride from last year, that was using all of our new mission technology that we had developed for Overwatch 2. And I will say, I thoroughly enjoyed the Wrath of the Bride experience last year. The world first run we did, the difficulty of it, the like fun little things you discovered the heroes had, like Ash's stun. That was fun. I enjoyed that. I was excited when we played that because I was like, wow, if PvE is even remotely like that, I'm looking forward to that. But I just wanted to talk about that with Wrath of the Bride. I enjoyed that one. It was fun. So the PvE content that we develop in the future is going to be using all of the technology and tools that we've created before. It'll be using new enemy ecologies that we've developed for Overwatch 2. There are a lot of really big story mission maps that are going to be coming with it. Does this mean that the boss fights will be more engaging? I'm actually curious on that, and I know that like they probably don't like touch on that, but like I think something the PvE modes could really use, and you saw a little bit of it in Wrath of the Bride, is I think seeing like the bosses be more engaging would be really good for like that. Like I thought Wrath of the Bride had that a little bit. We had to like go through like phases on each boss. So, and then we've talked a lot about plans about the different ways that we can bring some of the other content forward, whether it's talents for heroes or even some of the missions that we started developing for that release. But it's all going to be coming out seasonally in a different form and with a different purpose with that than what we had before. So we would like to repurpose some of it, and then we'd also use that technology to build a bunch of new stuff for us also. Essentially, they have a bunch of tools now that they can make the PvE more engaging, so when they do make new events, they'll probably be more in-depth like Wrath of the Bride was in comparison to previous missions they had before. Is what I'm at least getting from that, is that anything future PvE that they do will have more in-depth to it because they developed tools and technology for that type of stuff, rather than before where they didn't have that. And this is from Jared. Yeah, I think the breadth of experiences that we've been able to deliver this year are significantly different and more interesting than a lot of the live events that Overwatch 1 had. And then I think a lot of that is because of the work that went into PvE and the engine revamp. So going forward, I think you should just expect to see a lot more of that, a lot more pretty wild seasonal events where we experiment with stuff. And a lot of the cool, non-canonical stuff like Battle for Olympus, where augmenting hero abilities, things like that, are what you should expect to see a lot more in the future. All right, and then we're on to the last question here. PvE, whether a stated goal or not, was looking like a tool to broaden the appeal of the game, with the thinking being that people who can't or don't enjoy playing in online competitive environments can do single co-op and have this interesting, unique experience. That means the Overwatch player base diversifies and grows. What does Axon PvE and reintroducing some of those ideas into the PvP framework mean for the ambition of broadening the appeal of Overwatch and getting new players in? And then Jared responds to this question. Yeah, this is a really interesting one for me because I think if you only enjoy single player or PvE only experiences, then Overwatch is going to be a little bit tough for you right now. But once we get into this sort of mindset of frequently releasing PvE and PvE event content, and where every single season has something really interesting for people to play in a lot of variety, I think that can still be a good jumping on point for people who may not love hyper sweaty PvP matches, or who really just want to see some cool story content with characters they like or whatever. For me, it's a combination of being free to play now, which is inherently removing a pretty big barrier for a lot of people who can't spend the money to buy expensive games, combined with the fact that we're trying to diversify every single season to have a bunch of different experiences that people get to jump into. So, if you're the kind of person who just wants to grind competitive mode, that's totally cool. If you're the kind of person that wants to play and come in, play some arcade, this is a cool co-op mode for the seasonal event that I can do. That's awesome. We want there to be a lot more there. So while I don't see us springing this huge audience of PvE-only die-hard shooter players, I do see us being a really appealing game for anyone who just loves fun shooters and likes to learn new heroes and try different stuff. So yeah, it's kind of a different approach, but I also think our goal is to make the game as welcome as possible for a broad group as possible. Speaking of this, I want to talk about this for a second, and we'll and this article's now we just read that, and here's, oh wait, there's more. Oh, I was wrong. There's more. Oh, there was the I want to talk about that. Have they talked about, is PvE gonna like be in the battle pass? Like, is there gonna be like unlocks and that, like what like all of that there? I'm very curious on, because they haven't talked about like the the battle pass side of things with like the PVE stuff, or like if there's going to be more stuff to the battle pass now because there's PVE stuff, or is there going to be like events that go with it? Is it going to be just more challenge based stuff in that? Like, we don't see any of that stuff. Anyway, still more questions. Sorry. PVE was a big part of Overwatch 2, so people are going to think, well, those devs are going to have to get laid off or move elsewhere. What is the impact of not doing PVE anymore going to have on the team? This is from Jared. As a person who spends most of his time talking about organizational issues, one of the really cool things is we're able to take a bunch of people who have awesome expertise building new enemy types, big PvE missions, and big PvE worlds, and integrate them into the live game team with everybody else on the team. So instead of having this big monolithic PvE side of the team and a PvP side of the team, now we're sort of bringing everything together into a group that's focused on what is our live experience? What is the season over season experience? And how do we have people who specialize in PvP and people who specialize in PvE work together to create these awesome things? So there's no adverse impact on the team. We weren't letting people go who are working on PvE. On the contrary, we're really excited to bring them in together with the rest of the folks working on the events to figure out how do we use your unique superpower to create an awesome thing for a season. So we're actually working on these roadmaps now. They're longer and longer, and all those people are involved. I actually think it's super exciting just from a development and how do you have a team, have the team structured perspective. And I think there's a lot more that we could do with everyone's power combined than what we could do before. Blizzard has always been a studio that puts out, this is going to the next question. Blizzard has always been a studio that puts out high-quality games, and if a game isn't going to make it, we just never see it. That's always kind of been the way it is. This is a very rare look at a process where you try something and then you realize you failed. How do you think that reflects on you as a team, as a company, and as a studio? And this is a response from Jared. Every team at Blizzard is a little bit different, and Team 4 is unique in a lot of ways. One of the ways that I think this team is unique in the direction we're heading is just a push to be much more open, much more honest about how we're developing, and much more sort of transparent in what's working and what's not. Well, they've definitely been way more. They've talked about a lot more stuff than we've ever seen with Overwatch. That is for sure. Since I've joined, it's been a big push. Aaron is writing blogs every 2 weeks about how the game is going and what's changing. We have a lot of people from the team out on social talking about the details of their stuff. When people complain about matchmaking issues, Morgan is right there answering questions on Twitter. And that's not incorrect about Morgan. Morgan is on Twitter talking about PvE all the time. Not PvE, sorry. Comp. Morgan works on the comp matchmaking. PvE's on my mind right now. I think and I hope that it signals a shift in the team and the mentality of our part of the company that is really just building the experience alongside players as opposed to building it on our own and then handing it over to players. So what I really want to see is just that sort of co-development model, for the lack of a better way to put it, grow and grow over time. This is not the kind of thing we can just give you the tablet that is there. Please play this incredible thing and enjoy it. We want every single season to be something that is built on all learnings from previous seasons and all the feedback that we get from the players before. So my hope is that it signals a really healthy shift in the way that we develop and release the game. And then the last response is from Aaron Keller, and he says, and there's a reason why we're being more transparent here. We want to be able to give players more context in our development process, and we want people to have more context around why we have made this decision. It was a painful decision for this team to make. It was really hard for us to go through this experience. We're all very passionate about the things that we work on, and we're really passionate about the game, and part of that passion is to ensure that everything that we're making is right for our audience. So what I hope that we can take away from the roadmap, the video we released, and from things like this interview, is that yes, we know it's tough when games change or when things are reduced in scope, but at the same time, the people that are playing our game right now are playing a PvP game. My belief is that the reason they're playing the PvP game is because they like the game that they're playing. So it's up to us as a development team to continue to make that game as good as it possibly can be. And that's the real story here. How do you take the resources that we have, the team that we have, that is so passionate about the game, to make what people are playing the very best version that can be? That's our focus right now, and that's what I hope the takeaway from this can be. I will say, by the way, that was a very in-depth article, and a lot of those questions there was a lot of good questions asked there. I want to point that out. That was one of the coolest things about Aaron when you joined the team is he talked about how important it is that we stay humble. Being able to admit when we make mistakes, even when it's bad news, is something that I'm personally proud of. Other game teams you've been on aren't always like that. And sorry, I'm just reading the quote from Gavin in the chat, who says that's something they talk about within the team is basically, rather than just being like, well, yeah, it's not there, and being more like, just, hey, we want to do more and more of this.